Hey, how are you doing? I oftentimes see a number of articles, number of videos that mention about why Japanese people don't speak English on the internet. And it looks this fact is unshakable fact that we have no room to interfere in. As often as I see this kind of discussion, I feel like I'm forced to think that I absolutely don't speak English at all because I'm Japanese, right? From my eyes, I cannot help thinking that Japanese people absolutely want to assume that they don't speak English at all, even though they are capable of speaking English. So sometimes I think this kind of negative perspective towards language acquisition in Japan is kind of conspiracy that is set by a business person or companies engaged in the English language education market in Japan. So because the more Japanese people who assume that they don't speak English increase, the more English learning method, English learning products will be sold in the English education market in Japan. So it is not exaggerated to say that there is no one who doubts the prerequisite that Japanese people don't speak English. And so nobody makes a hypothesis that is it true that Japanese people don't speak English, or and anybody considers the possibility that we Japanese may possibly take it for granted that we Japanese don't speak English at all. And as an overall trend, strangely, there is no discussion in Japan that Japanese may speak English very well, as a matter of fact, but Japanese people don't think this way because they just raised the standard of English speaking level to the advanced one themselves, and they assume that the advanced level is the only level that assure themselves to strongly say that I speak English. So the atmosphere that Japanese people have negative thoughts about speaking English is kind of conspiracy set by companies that want to sell English learning method, English learning products by letting them think that English speaking level other than advanced one doesn't deserve to entitle them to speak English with native English speaker. So in the first place, I think it's too unreasonable to make Japanese people believe scheme setting or conspiracy setting that Japanese don't speak English, because education standard in Japan is quite splendid in the world, and children learn English at least for 6 years until they graduate from high school in Japan. So no matter how unreasonable and outdated English education plan is introduced in a Japanese school, the vast majority of Japanese people learn English at least for 6 years. In such situation, I doubt that Japanese people speak no English. Moreover, the amount of variety of English learning books and products in Japan are probably richer than any other countries, right? You just visit a bookstore in Japan, in a language corner, in a language education corner in the bookstore in Japan, 90% of books occupied in this corner is English education books or English learning books. I think environment to learn English in Japan is perfectly organized, I think, but they persistently believe that they don't speak English at all. So I think presumably, if Japanese people are given the situation that forced them to speak English out of necessity, they will prove the merit of English speaking skill. I think this is the problem of necessity. In Cambodia, not educated boys and girls aggressively speak English to communicate with foreigners in English to do their business, because this is how they make a living. And I don't think education standard in Cambodia is much higher than that in Japan, at least in the sense of whether Japanese people can speak English accurately and grammarly. They must have a big potential in speaking English, but they don't do that because there is no necessity in Japan. The Japanese people have no confidence in speaking English because they don't have a chance to use it, and they don't have a chance to improve that they can speak English because people around them, Japanese people, people around them speak only Japanese because we are in Japan. So that's it. So no more or no more and no less about it. The fact this fact has nothing has this fact has you know directly nothing to do with whether they are capable of speaking English. This is the problem of necessity, I think.